A frontline worker's job can be a thankless one, especially
Is there anybody here?
when the heartbeats stop
What's that?
and the hauntings begin.
Things like that aren't supposed to happen.
This seriously scared the crap out of me.
It scared me so badly.
Haunted Hospitals on T+E.
Just growing up with like a lot of those stories, you know, and how to engage with that spirit world. You know, these are all things I think about when I'm filming these shows. Yeah, I was born on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation into the Lakota Sioux tribe. My Indian name is Matwachante, which is Sioux for bear heart, which is that Indian name is it's like a coming of age ceremony. And the way my grandfather knew it was time to give me this name was he began having a series of visions in his dream time. And for us, the dream time is a place where we get the bulk of our messages and visions from spirit. It's a place where those who have crossed over can visit us, because we believe the underworld, the spirit world, and the astral lie really close together. So it's easy for spirits to move into that dream time and impart messages. So for us, like a dream time visitation wasn't any different than a physical visitation. You know, we took those really seriously. So he began taking it really seriously when he saw one of his eagle feathers moving around, and the wind kept catching it. He'd find it like in different places. And so in one dream, he found it rotating above a lake, and he went to investigate. He looked down, he saw a set of bear tracks. So he followed them to the edge of the water. And when he looked in, he saw my reflection smiling back at him. So that's how he knew that eagle feather was for me. It was time for my name. You know, I thought I was going to get something like really cool, like Nightwing or, you know, something like that. But it's just based on like your spirit. And in my family, I have like a really big heart. You know, people came to me for information. You know, they, you know, always cried on my shoulder. So that's why he named me Bearheart. But, you know, like the earliest stories he would tell me, like my bedtime stories, were ghost stories, you know. And these weren't just like goosebumps or something cute like that. These were like real stories, real things that happened. And they weren't just stories. There were actually instructions on how to engage with that spirit world. So as far back as I can remember, you know, every one of my family has had numerous experiences with the paranormal. For instance, right now, one of our elders is getting ready to cross over. So in our tribe, for Lakota Sioux, this is a time when you really have to be mindful, because there are a number of paranormal experiences, poltergeist activity that begins to heighten. You really have to pay attention to your dream time. And this is just basically a message from spirit, you know, from our ancestors, to prepare ourselves emotionally and to say our goodbyes if there's anything we need to communicate. So I went down to Denver 2 days ago to be with my family. And again, everyone was having their share of paranormal experiences. This is kind of like my Batman room, and I've had like a lot of paranormal activity in this room. This is why I was filmed from here. But one of the my action figures, signed action figures, had jumped off the wall. I had a doorbell. Like in the 4 years I've lived here, the doorbell cover flew off the wall and landed on the floor. And then we heard a woman downstairs. So it's been really hard to sleep, because for us, you know, we know this is just people coming back. You know, people that are going to escort my aunt into the spirit world. But it's really distracting, you know, and you never know if you're going to see that person, if you're going to hear them. But again, my dream time has just been really like rich, you know, lately. So this is a really active time for everyone in my family. But this is just my background. This is where I come from. For the last 16 years, I've managed a metaphysical shop, a spiritual living shop in Colorado Springs. So I bring a lot of my knowledge, my spiritual knowledge as an Lakota Sioux, all of my tribal beliefs. And because of this, you know, eventually I was invited on like Paranormal Night Shift, Paranormal 911, Hospitals, all these kinds of shows to offer my advice with this kind of background as the paranormal consultant. Well, I mean, I've been active like on television since like 2012, I believe. But I mean, here I've done a lot of things like yourself locally, you know, like different tours, you know, being written out of books and magazines, like local news for the tours and the different investigations we're offering. But, you know, we were filmed by, like in 2013, we were filmed by a two-time Pulitzer Prize winning cameraman, which is really cool. So all of these things just kind of grew like over time. It wasn't like an overnight thing. But I think because of all of the things I was doing in media, somehow people were just aware of me. So like in 2017, I was contacted by a producer for a show called Scariest Night of My Life, which we filmed in Chicago in a haunted hotel. And that was really cool. And that was like one of my first experiences, like in like my first modern experience, like my first ghost hunt, paranormal investigation was actually like at age 12, but once like in 2007, like Ghost Hunters was really big by that time. There's like a lot of shows on the air. So we were more involved during that time with the media. So I think they just saw like a lot of my work. They knew I wasn't just kind of like a fly-by-night paranormal group. And a lot of what we were contributing, really added to like the story, something that could educate people. So yeah, I was just one of those producers that was then involved with, I think, like Paranormal 911, some of those directors, Tobin Long, were all involved in these things. So I just kept getting invited back to different shows. So I don't know, I'm so used to, like, I'm an actor, so I'm used to memorizing something and then acting, listening and responding to my co-star. And when you do these shows, it's just this kind of camera. Everything's dark, so it's just kind of like a disembodied voice. They kind of show you where the camera is, but it's just weird because you don't really feel like you're interacting with a person like you that I can see. So it's like the actors that act against green screen. You want a really compelling story, and you want to provide educate the public as much as you can, but it's very different from acting. Obviously on these shows, you're giving real information. You're having to be aware of not really a character, but you want to tell a compelling story. You want to make everything you say like vibrant and interesting. And so when I film these shows, I'm given like, for instance, a book of case files, usually like 13 different case files. So they're just like a collection of different stories. And I'm asked to give commentary, like what I think is going on, because she keeps seeing this creature in the basement. What do I think this creature is? Is there anything in my background as a Native American that would explain what this is? Shapeshifters, whatever it is. And then, but again, with television, it's usually like the scariest thing. These are like, a lot of times people don't understand, these are like our modern ghost stories. And, ghost stories were always trying to, kind of like traditionally spooky. So there's a lot of people that, I had a friend at the time, he's like, these shows are like so fear-based, like they're fake. They're just like putting more fear into the world. Well, people like to be scared, just like ghost stories. That's why we tell these ghost stories. You have a safe space to kind of get that like, ooh, ah. But when I got on these shows, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to educate them. So when I tell these stories, it's, I'll get there and it's almost like this soup. I have all these stories floating in my head, all these people's names. So when I get there, it's hard enough just to keep track of who did what. But fortunately, like Tobin Long, and, I've had some really, really great directors guide me, on a lot of these shows. So I'm really grateful to be involved with these. Well, I've been on TV since like 1991. I used to be like on a dance television show. I was a dancer at one time, so I was always in front of cameras. So I didn't need any instruction on that. The part of switching gears for me was that it's almost like in my store, the spiritual living store. Someone comes in, they're having some paranormal activity. They've seen one of the shows. They think something similar is going on in their house. So they need some sage or Palo Santo, Florida water, something to restore the natural balance. So, that's what I'm there for. So I can just very naturally and very gently explain what these tools are. So it's the same thing on these shows. I stuff so much information in my head because I want to educate the viewer so much, because there's so much misinformation out there. And granted, there's like a lot of fear, and I'm trying to take them out of that space because obviously it's a lot of what we put out. A lot of our investments are returns. So I try to get people to take more responsibility for their life experience. And to, when I first started my paranormal investigation group, which was at the time called the Spirit Chasers, it's now called Future Ghost. we did a lot of what we called residentials, where we went out and just smudged people's houses, burned sage, sweetgrass, cedar, all of these things. And then like next week they need us again. Another 2 weeks they need us back. So it got really exhausting and got really expensive because we didn't accept any, payment for this. As a Sioux, we weren't allowed to really accept any payment for that. But we just found it far more empowering people to teach them how to do it themselves. So on these shows, it's, I have this opportunity to educate people, get rid of some of that like misinformation. But as soon as that camera's on, there's just no, obviously you want to be like kind of like a one take wonder. So on the plane, I always think like on the plane there, I'm going to have time to like memorize all these case files. And that never happens. It's just too distracting because usually I'm only getting my case files like less than a week before I film. So with my full-time job, I don't have a lot of time to like write 3 pages worth of commentary for like one story and then memorize all of those things. So sometimes it can be like a really stressful experience because you're trying to decide what you're going to pick out from this commentary that's going to best educate the public, but it's also going to be something that they're going to use. You're going to want to use buzzwords or something that's maybe popular or just something that's really going to get their attention and stick with them, So, but again, because it's television and for entertainment purposes only, it's often going to be the more scary kind of thing because that's what gets the ratings up, So sometimes it's frustrating, but sometimes it's also neat to see what they do with the story once they add the special effects and everything else. For myself, who grew up with ghost stories, it's amazing. This is something I always wanted to do. So it's really in line with my spirit. It's just I think the pressure comes from, okay, I'm representing the Lakota Sioux. Obviously, I don't want to shame my family. But again, once you record it, you never know what they're going to use. Or, for instance, there was a show back in I'm not going to name the show, but when we got there, they asked us 2 different questions. What was your experience at this location? And what's your favorite horror story? What are your favorite things about this story? Tell us about the story and what happened. So what ended up happening was when it premiered, they had they had combined the 2. So it made it look like I was talking about this location that we were in, but they were using the explanations from like this horror story. So they made it sound like I was in this horrifying space and I was like terrified and there was murders there and all this stuff. And I was like, well, I didn't say that, but I did. It's just the way they manipulate it. So fortunately, they don't do that like on hospitals or Paranormal 911, any of these things. And that's why I keep returning because it's done in a very professional manner. It's not as sensational as like some of the other shows I've seen out there. So, and nothing against the shows at all. They're all fun. But I think there is a lot of misinformation there. So that's why it's really important to me just to provide something and to ground people, because when a lot of people are asking for help with paranormal activity in the home, the first thing, it's almost like a doctor, do no harm. So you really got to get them out of that fear, that state of fear, which can contaminate your perception. Everyone is so friendly, so creative. Every time I filmed out there, it is just such a great crew. And there's so much harmony there, too. I mean, there's so much chemistry. So they really know how to put you in a comfortable space where you can just relax and speak, Well, sometimes it's in New York. Last time it was in Detroit for Haunted Hospital Season 2, for the people in America anyway. Sometimes it's in Toronto. I never know where they're going to send me. But for instance, the first time I came to Toronto, I had such a terrible experience. And it's funny because, I grew up watching, like in the 90s anyway, like a lot of shows that were filmed in Toronto, like, as a horror enthusiast, like Friday the 13th, the series, or as someone who's loved sci-fi, like Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future were filmed out there. So there's a lot of shows that were filmed that I love in Canada. And I've always loved Canada. So I was so looking forward to this experience. But I didn't understand some of like the language, like the signs. I got out there, I didn't have Canadian money. For some reason, I have a really bad habit of wearing really bad shoes when I go to film. No one's going to be looking at my feet, but I'm always getting these like nice new boots before they're broken in. So I'm wandering all over like downtown Toronto, probably in places where I shouldn't be. I don't know. But all of those things are really uncomfortable. And then you get put up like in a hotel room, which is just unfamiliar. They're nice hotels, but like where I sleep, I have crystals by my bedside, things that influence my dream time, a really comfortable space. So because I'm a person that's really sensitive to energy, I really pick up on the energy of the people that used to be there. I don't consciously attempt to do that. It's just I'm always aware of that. So when I filmed, I think it was season 3 of Haunted Hospitals, the people in the door, the people in the room next to me were having a karaoke party or something. So I didn't get to bed till like about 2 or 3. And usually I'm up late anyway, like memorizing all these stories. So I have all the stories straight, what I want to say about these stories, and making sure it's just quality, like a quality communication. But when your call time is like at 7:30 around there, like it was like for season 4, that's really hard because for one, your bags have bags, so you're concerned about how you're going to look. But then two, you're just trying to keep a track of everything that you're just wanting everything to sink in. It's like sitting with the script and trying to memorize everything. So for me, again, it's just they put you like in a really wonderful space, but it's more of my own, I think, anxiety that I'm trying to overcome about how I want to communicate like the best thing possible that I can that's going to be most helpful for the viewing audience, because this goes everywhere. Like Haunted Hospitals, you have it in Canada, season 4. They have it in the UK. We don't have it here in America yet, which is the biggest question why. And I think it's because, right now there's like a writer's strike, there's an actor strike. But even before that, like a lot of these shows go right to Discovery Plus and Travel Channel. Well, right now there's this merger that's happened with Discovery Plus and HBO, which is now just called Max. So I know a lot of the programming was kind of like on hold, and then now with the strike, we don't know when that's going to end. So I haven't even seen anything I filmed. I've had people reaching out to me just this last week. Do you know anything about season 4 when that's supposed to premiere in America? And I still don't yet. Like right now, they're already looking for stories for season 5. So yeah, I think there's also like rights issues because, for instance, when I filmed Scariest Night of My Life, there's only one episode that made it to Discovery Plus, and that one episode has been on there for months. There's been no additional episodes. Like I think I was in episode 4, but so it's just really strange. And some of the other shows I've done are not yet on Discovery Plus. They've been on Travel Channel and all these other places. But there's so many streaming services now. It's just insane. Well, season 3 was interesting. I finally got to meet Richard Estep, one of my co-stars. He also lives in Colorado, I believe Boulder. But we were always just kind of like, we've done the same things, but we weren't ever like in the same location. We always knew each other. So that was nice to finally, meet him. And that one was really weird because that was like during the height of the pandemic. So everyone was masked. I filmed that like in downtown Denver. And I reacted or acted or spoke to like an iPad from a director that was beamed in from Canada. So again, it's hard for me because when I'm in my store educating people, I'm right in front of a live person. And again, on these things, it's just kind of like this light you're trying to focus on. So it's easy to get too much in your head, because I could go on and on and on. But that one was really interesting because it was in Denver. I knew Denver, like downtown Denver. I knew all the streets. I was really comfortable. I thought I was going to be able to just pull all of this stuff out of my head, but my mother had just passed away. So I had a lot of what I wanted to say about the spirit world and how this is just a natural process. They don't really leave us. They're there. They're just in a different dimension, like a place that's kind of overlaid over our physical reality. But it was really, I probably should have just found someone else to go on because I was just so scatterbrained, with all this stuff going on. The pandemic was hard enough with attitudes in America, just these really polarized beliefs about, everything, a very politically charged climate. So again, just being very sensitive to that energy. I probably wasn't in the best place, but it was usable. They took what I brought and they used it. So, you're when you do these things, I think you're really hard on yourself, I never want to see myself. I don't like hearing my voice. So once I record the shows, I might peek, but I don't really watch these things. I don't want to see myself, even when I've done like I've been an extra on movies and stuff. I don't want to really want to see what I look like. So yeah. But the stories are so interesting. Oh my God. I was invited to film in Chicago, really old hotel. So it's kind of researching the history of how old this was, because I always hear about like these old speakeasies and the mob. And when I get into a place, I really have to tap into the history. What spirits are there? How does this building speak to me? So I get there, and I'm sitting by the windowsill, by the window, and I'm just reading the story, what I want to say. And I was kind of feeling alone and like lost. For me, that's how I really tap in on like paranormal investigations. I tap into the emotional state of the people that might have been there previously. If there's anything someone wants to say. So in that case, it was a woman. I'm just sitting here, and when I get communication from spirit, it's like more impressions, and I just kind of like let it play out in my mind. I don't really, some people hear voices and stuff. I usually don't get that. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to go over my lines, because my filming is like within like, I think 45 minutes. And I'm aware of a woman sitting next to me. And what happened was, through this like movie, this mind movie, she was having an affair with a man. And she was kind of like a mistress. So he would meet her at this hotel, which was the room that I was in. And for some reason, he didn't come. I think he chose his wife over, this woman. So she's just crying, and she doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. And before I knew it, I was starting to cry too. And, you always try to say, oh, I'm just having an emotional release. I'm really stressed out. I'm just doing kind of like this release on it, like when I get before the camera. Really wasn't any of those things. It was just being in the same emotional state. So then before I knew it, it's like, oh no, I've got 5 minutes to get downstairs and onto set. So I'm rushing. I forget something, one of my pages, I have to go back. And when I opened the door, I thought what I saw was like a door knocker. But when I processed it later, it was like a tie. So because I was in this, I got like in this very rushed, high energetic state, I tapped into another spirit that was there, which was a businessman that used to stay in this room for his conferences or like whatever. And I only saw him like briefly, but again, when I go to these places, I usually, it's really like the being in that same emotional state as someone previously that really unlocks like a lot of this activity. So that one was a really neat one to film because spirit is present, the energy is just flowing. And when you get that, it's just all of the information you want to convey just comes out, effortlessly. Well, they really do. So for instance, I believe these are the ones from like season 4. So what I do is I print them out. I kind of like highlight the main like things I want to focus on. And then I'll type out exactly what I want to say about them. So for instance, you might get things, is this story about dealing with an errant spirit? What are shadow figures? This person is seeing a blur. What could that blur be? Well, I don't know. I wasn't there. They give you as much of the story as you can, but a lot of this stuff, you're just trying to like, well, okay, how much more can I say about shadow people? How much more can I say about demons? Because as an Lakota Sioux, I'm only pulling what I know from my tribe. There's a lot of shows out there that have a lot to say about Sasquatch, which isn't our tribe too. We've seen these things like skinwalkers. We know about these things. Shadow people obviously are very, I don't want to say popular. It's really great that these things are coming into mass consciousness and people are getting more information about how to engage if they want to engage or protect themselves from these things. But for something like demons, as a Lakota Sioux, we had a different belief system. We didn't have a concept of heaven or hell. We didn't worship Jesus, way back in the day. So when they talk about like demons, we have entities that might be seen as malevolent, but they're more like an animal kind of like defending its realm. Even for me as a Sioux, like my uncle was like a reservation cop, so he would see a lot of these things traveling these back late at night, spirits. When I'd say, well, how do you know that was a spirit and not just someone hitchhiking off the side of the road? Well, you can see through them. Spirits generate their own light. They're luminous. I'd be, oh, what did you do? You're not really supposed to approach these things. You have no business because you don't know. It's unpredictable. It can be dangerous. These things have energies that can be toxic to us. So you don't really, and then even if you were like a healer or a medicine man in the tribe, you weren't to go in areas where there was like a lot of death because you could take on that energy and not only kind of like energetically infect yourself and be infected with like maybe like become like a host where this spirit, this attachment might start influencing your beliefs and your thought patterns and eventually your behavior. But if you're doing healings on someone, then that energy goes into that person too. Because we hear so much about attachments and everything else and how to protect yourself from these things. But, when you have people willingly going into these locations and, like myself, like last night, I willingly went into a location that was really high in paranormal activity. Just growing up with like a lot of those stories, and how to engage with that spirit world. These are all things I think about when I'm filming these shows. So when I talk about demons and not having that in my cultural belief, I rely on like maybe like information I get from the metaphysical store I manage because I run the psychic reader schedule. So we've got about like 7-8 different readers, and I'll interview them. Okay, what's your experience with spirits? Because or demons, because I'm gonna be doing this show like in a couple weeks, and I just want some more background on this. So there's always ways to educate yourself instead of just getting on Google. But demons are very rare when from what I know. Like a lot of the readers I work with, there's certainly presences that might be considered like demonic or like malevolent, but people always forget we come into this life with a host of guidance. We come in with ancestors, spirit animals, animal totems, guardian angels, whatever our belief system is. We come in with a whole host of spiritual guidance to help us on our path. So a lot of times we forget that those guides are there to kind of protect us from things that go on in their realm. So there's a lot of misinformation, I think, about demons. I think Richard Estep is writing a book now about demons, which is really great to kind of take away from some of the sensationalism, like on a lot of these shows. Because I've had a lot of people come into the store that are convinced that there's a demon in their house because they watched a show about demons and, oh, I'm having all these things that must be like a demon. I had this woman come in, God bless her, must have been about three months ago. And she's like, I have a demonic presence in my house that's not letting me burn sage. I'll light the stick of sage and it doesn't burn. So I went over there and her sage was just packed too tight that no air could get in there. I was like, this isn't a demonic presence. You just kind of have to stub it out, like let a little bit of air get in there. But these are just the kind of things that I really try to convey on the shows and really take away like a lot of the misunderstandings. And because a lot of people, it's almost like watching Wheel of Fortune and then buying the home game. You can bring Wheel of Fortune into your house and play it just like you see it on TV. A lot of these people are just doing what they see on TV, or like they're influenced by a lot of these things they're seeing on TV. There was a particular show where they were pulling out of their butt like jinn from like India, different demons from like different cultures. So people watch these, and I kind of got a feel for like what show they're watching when they would come in. Yes, there's a jinn in the backseat of my vehicle that won't leave. How do I get rid of a jinn? Well, so again, just a lot of misinformation, So there's definitely, there's like haunted hospitals. When I read these stories, I mean, these are people that have really been through a lot. For myself, a lot of times I forget that these people didn't grow up with this. This wasn't a part of their tribe being a family, community, whatever it is. So they don't have any idea how to engage with spirit or what to do. This is their first time. And a lot of these people, it takes a lot to get them before the camera because they can't even come out to maybe like their friends or their coworkers. Like for us, we were always instructed to these were like personal experiences, and these things could scare people. So this is like a lot of things, these stories we kept to ourselves, like a lot of what happened to my uncle on the reservation kind of kept to himself because he had experiences with star people, Sasquatch, all of these things. But it really wasn't until like Steven Spielberg's Poltergeist came out, I think like in '82, where that kind of opened up a dialogue with other families that were having it, oh my, thank God there's a movie about it. I can talk to other people about it now. So once that movie came out, I mean, we were talking about like a lot of our neighbors. I don't know if we were like on a ley line, a place of like high energy, but there was a lot of paranormal activity like in the neighborhood that I grew up in. So Same thing with these shows. There's a lot of things going on in these houses or like in these hospitals, but they don't really have a background. They don't have anyone maybe they can communicate with it. So I think that's a hard thing about the producers with these shows, not just trying to find a nurse or a doctor that's willing to go on record, but also to go in front of a camera, too, and share that experiences, which is something everyone needs. That they want to hear that they're not going insane. They don't want to be ridiculed or belittled. So that's a really important part of it. It really does. And then also, like the past 15, 16 years working in a spiritual living store and really hearing, real people that come in. I mean, people have no idea really what we coexist with. As Native Americans, that's part of our earliest spiritual teachings is coexistence. Coexisting with people that are different than you, coexisting with people that have different political beliefs, different ideas about gender. There's all these hot topics in America right now, but coexistence is so necessary. And a lot of what we coexist with is unseen. All these molecules and atoms that do these different things, all these quantum mechanics that we don't really recognize, things that go on in our dream time that we just dismiss. We dismiss so many of these things. But I have people coming into my store. I had this man like last year, just kind of like did a once around the store, really nervous. And, after 16 years, you kind of get a feel like he wants to ask a question. I'm just going to, let him ask, I'll say if there's anything I can do for you. Eventually he comes up to me and he's like, I have something that's going to sound crazy. I mean, I've heard that so many times. But there's something going on in my basement, like my son had died, some years back. I thought it was him, but this is something else. I picked up a plate of nachos and threw it across the room. I've seen things levitate in front of me. This is clearly someone that there's no mental imbalance. This is a man that is suffering from a very real experience, and he doesn't have any way to, he's coming into the store basically, but there's a lot of embarrassment there, and there really shouldn't be any embarrassment. A fear of like humiliation, how they're changing the name of like UFOs to like UAPs now. And a lot of that too, to give it maybe more of like a scientific sounding name, but when you talk about ghosts, it's just really sad. I remember when I was a child, and even when I grew up and went on dates and stuff, and I would try to talk about these things, they talk about this weird juju where it was just belittled a lot. So really trying to create an atmosphere, a safe space where people can tell their stories and share these stories. I hear things all the time. We do this thing every Saturday at the store called like a mystic meetup. So we talk about like at 2:00 in the afternoon, we have people come in. We talk about different things like maybe tarot cards or pendulums or smudging and creating a sacred space was the one we did like last weekend. So it's a really great way to get people together in a safe space, let them tell their stories. Because a lot of times they hang on to all these stories. There's no way for them to express these things. They have so much inside. And it's not just that, but they need witnesses. They need someone to validate like what they're going through. So that's another big part of it too. And just listening a lot of times too. Definitely, I've seen so many people cry like on camera too. It's like an actor. I have to cry, at the, like for particular scenes. But even when I'm not in that space, just being honest and open and genuine with people and present, even if I'm just telling a story to like a camera. There was one, maybe it was the second season of Haunted Hospitals, or maybe it was Paranormal 911. But there was a woman who was taking a motorcycle ride with her brother. And he had spun out. He was driving a ways in front of her, but he had spun out and went under a truck and was killed instantly. So this EMT gets to the scene, and the woman spun out and went under the vehicle. So this woman comes to the scene, this EMT, and she sees this woman come up like in the motorcycle gear, and she's kind of bloodied and stuff. She's like, "Please don't let my brother see my body." This EMT thinks she's reacting with a real physical person. So she goes to do something, and the woman's gone. Well, they go to explore the crime scene, and she sees the woman lying dead right there, like in the motorcycle gear, and then her brother's coming. So obviously she's trying to, keep the brother away from the crime scene. But that one just really affected me emotionally, just the way that I think it takes a lot for these people to share this experience. So this woman was just so honest, and her story was just so genuine. So I kind of got emotional reading that one, because I was really tapping into, like, as a lot of times when I do paranormal investigations, it's being like empathic, really empathetic, and really again tapping into those emotions and being just very courteous of spirit and respectful. I'm really sorry this is something that you had to go through. Last time I was on your show, I talked about going to Vegas. I went for my birthday just a couple months ago, and we stayed at the MGM Grand. Well, it's called the Horseshoe now. It was Bally's. Before Bally's, it was MGM Grand. And in 1980, there was a fire there that killed 87 people. So we got a hold of the coroner's report, and it was so eerie to see exactly where people had died. So we went up floor by floor. Like one of the elevators we took was having a lot of, like, the lights were flashing and kept stopping on a certain floor. But it was really spooky to see these, like, red crosses and to see exactly where they'd found different bodies and stuff. So when we got up there, the first thing we did was we said a prayer for these people, like offered an apology if we were intruding on their space. And then as soon as we did that, like, this ice machine next to us just started pouring all this water at the bottom and just kind of flooding that area, which I think maybe that was an expression of spirit, any remaining spirit, that they needed water, because back then when this fire happened, there weren't any, like, automatic sprinkler systems, smoke detectors. There was none of that stuff. So because of this tragedy, there's a complete refurbishment of all these hotels. There wasn't even a way to separate the smoke, to kind of like seal off the smoke in the elevators. So a lot of people that died from, like, smoke inhalation and stuff. So when we go there, we just try to be very respectful and courteous, and just let, if there's any spirits there, know that we understand what they've gone through, and we're very sorry if there's anything we communicate as far as if they're stuck in that location, because a lot of these stories I read are about spirits that are just stuck. It's really sad. Again, I believe that we come into this world with a host of guidance that helps those spirits cross over. But there are some occasions where there are spirits that are earthbound, because of the tragedy, the way in which they died. And that's really sad. That's hard to read about, No, because I really have to be available. I really have to put myself in their shoes so I can really understand what's going on. Maybe some people can maybe, like, separate the two, but it's so important to me to offer usable information, in this era of, like, fake news and shows that are, like, really sensational and stuff, to really offer something that's going to be helpful to people, so to where it's like, when people come into my store, well, I just saw this show and I think there's a skinwalker living in my backyard, just that kind of thing, to where I can be on these shows and educate people, and take away a lot of that there's so much paranoia anyway, like, not just in America, but in the world. So anything I try to do is trying to, like, lessen that and take them out of that space, and maybe put them in an environment where they feel that they have more control as far as being able to smudge and spiritually cleanse themselves, their environment, help others, and really put more responsibility out, more light, to hold a light maybe more in their community. So like right now I'm working on my own shows. I'm doing one called I Dare You, which is based more off, like, MTV's Fear from, like, 2000. I'm doing another one called a Dead Time Diner, where I'm just kind of like in this diner that's only open during dead time, and I'm talking about different paranormal stories, hopefully waiting for a call and invitation back to haunted hospitals. But also, like last year I released my book, Selfies from the Underworld. I'm working on my new one, which is called Dreamtime Architecture. So that'll be out in the fall. And that's more about the Native American dreamtime, kind of that realm, and how I really balanced the two, growing up. So, yeah, there's a lot of trips and different things in the works. So,
A frontline worker's job can be a thankless one, especially
Is there anybody here?
when the heartbeats stop. What's that? And the hauntings begin.
Things like that aren't supposed to happen.
This seriously scared the crap out of me.
It scared me so badly.
Haunted Hospitals on T+E.